There we go. All right.
All right. So
Let's have a blessing on the food.
Absolutely.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for all your blessings that you've given us. And we're thankful that you're doing the gathering thing. And we gather today here in your name to partake of food and the food that can't be seen. And this we say in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. There's I'm gonna get some knife for that. But
Okay.
if you don't want sweets, there's avocado you can put on, or there's some jams here provided by the church ladies. We did a homeless project, and I would deliver free berries to the peoples, and then they would return kind of the tithe. And I'd say, just bring back 10% of whatever processed, and they would. The ones who felt they should, and the ones who didn't, I was okay with that too. I try to work without compulsion strongly, so that, anyways, we can cut bread with that. Feel free to do that.
Okay.
And let me grab.
So this bread was just made this afternoon?
Yeah, just this afternoon. I felt to make it today.
How about a smaller knife for spreading butter?
Yes.
I'm a bread and butter kind of gal. I'm not usually put anything else on my bread.
All right.
Either butter or cream cheese.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we've got more milk too, but we'll start out with this one.
Okay.
So there's some milk, and this is preparatory to, I used to do in town what's called Jesus People Potluck.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about, it seemed like about a year. And Outcasts, Misfits, and me, because that's my tribe. And we would have a potluck, and it'd mostly be me preparing stuff. Occasionally have somebody bring something, but what's coming next is called Jamming for Jesus. And it's just going to simplify Jesus People Potluck. And so it's going to be bread and toppings. So I'll bring what toppings you want: jam, honey butter, sandwich meat, whatever occurs to people. And yeah, jamming with Jesus. So jam and bread are going to be the things that, and I still wait for Jesus to give the second witness on that. There's a lot of ideas I'll have that'll come, and they're for later. So everything has its time, as you know. And I've learned patience, because I'm like, I don't want to be plowing fields. Jesus doesn't want me to plow right now. He's got plenty of fields he's having me plow as is. So that's what this represents to me, what we're doing right now, breaking bread. And I see us doing that in this community and others. And I'm a prototyper, so I'm an architect, engineer, and designer for Early Zion. So much of what I do, I always assume like, oh, you're having me do this so I can set an example, I can set up a prototype. And it might be something that I do for a while and then go away to a different thing so people can see, and then they can do if they want. I make movies of them. So
napkins.
Oh, yes, we do. In fact, I did have them set out there.
So you're a prototyper. Are you also a teacher, trainer, handed offer, navigator, or not?
Yeah, well, only, well, it's hard to say. It's whatever Jesus wants, but what I recognize is the pattern. That yes, training, and the first person I'm supposed to train is myself.
Right.
So I use a huge amount of energy just to do that. In fact, I'll read you. I'm working on an episode that I'm going to do later today, and it's about that training. So this is let's see, blah 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 blah. Where is it? It turns out I have to be retrained, radically retrained. From the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep at night. It's Jesus training, Jesus training, Jesus training. Why? Because in 2015, I asked Jesus for a special blessing, a gift. I didn't even know I had been asking for it. Yes, you did. No, you did. Kind of. But it was not like, hey, this is the thing I want from you, Jesus. I didn't know to ask that. But I did know before I was born again, I was asking for something. I wanted to enter his kingdom or some approximation. I sensed that it was available. And because he did give me, well, in fact, when I started seeking it, he gave me otherworldly experience for just a few moments. And so I'm like, oh yeah, that's available. I mean, and that one was really strange. Later, I realized that Jesus had put it into my heart to ask him for this special gift. I want more Jesus. I hunger and I thirst like for lots and lots more Jesus. And so anyways, I'm skipping over some of it. I want more Jesus. However, we had a problem, Houston, because I was old in 2015, not like a little child in the way that I should go, where you could train me up in the way I should go. And when I'm old, I'll not depart from it. I'd already departed from it. And I was in my 50s and quite crusty. I had crusties in my heart, probably some cooties too. But bottom line is, if you wait till you're in your 50s to try to get in shape to make the Olympics or to be a walk-on quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers or be the top gun in the Air Force, you've got your work cut out for you. You're going to need a miracle. You're also going to need a whole lot of training. Same if you are in your 50s and decide to be a super deep Christian. And I'm not saying that I can actually be the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, nor make the Olympics 100-yard dash, or make $1 billion before I die. I don't even know if I can be a super deep Christian. But Jesus has given me permission to try. More than that, he has commanded me to try. Jesus likes it when you try. Jesus says that that's the gospel of try. So every morning, like Rocky, drinking raw eggs and getting up and I try. But Jesus has not had me drink raw eggs yet. Instead, he has me sing songs and do stretches and other religious rituals that are mysterious that tell a story that you're going to find at www.getmorejesus.com. So this is actually an orientation to what people would find there and to what I would find there. The good news is it is the hardest thing I've ever done something, the hardest I've ever tried, but it's also the most worthy goal I can think of. And I have the best coach in the world, Jesus, and he's done it before. Because I started old, Jesus had to get a little rough with me, and he still does, because I'm so way hard-hearted. The only way I suppose that Jesus can get me these unprecedented amounts of more Jesus inside of me is to do some unprecedented things. Or shall I say, command me to do some unprecedented things. And then I go on. So I'm explaining to myself, why am I doing this every morning? Because I do these, and it keeps building. He has built these training routines into my morning. And he's told me throughout your whole day, you're going to have to do these trainings. And, you know, it's not like training for a 100-yard dash. It's more like meditative training, but in a unique way that he's showing me. And so when I say I'm an architect, engineer, and designer for Early Zion, it's actually the most important thing he's shown me is to retrain my mind and heart with him, and then to set up training protocols. So you asked about, will I be a trainer or a teacher? Yes. So everything that I like, that's going to be a movie, I think, by tonight on Jesus TV. So I will talk, and I'm always talking from the dust to myself, to my future self, first and foremost, so that I can go, now, what was this about? Because a lot of the things are pretty complex, they're strange. And then, and even if today they don't appear strange, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. You give me a month, then I'm like, what was I thinking? Now that feeling is getting less and less, because I'm like, oh, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it. And that's the nature, like if you're playing the piano, this is strange. Oh, why do I have to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb? It's just strange. That's not what I saw somebody do on the piano. Yeah, they didn't play Mary Had a Little Lamb. They were accomplished. You've got to go down low and learn these notes and so forth. So that's the kind of training, self-training, that I think I'll be doing for the rest of my life. So it's a subset of the training. Then Jesus, and it's not me, this is the thing that I've learned. He's going to bring people. So he says, you bring your loaf, you bring your fish, we go into training. And then he says, but you need to take notes because there's going to be other people who will need similar. They'll have to adjust the training to fit there. And the kind of training that I'm getting is so foreign because not everybody's called to certain callings. That's what I've had to understand. Like Ammon went to King Limhi, and the sons of Messiah went to various places. What were their wives doing? Did their wives have to have the same capacities? Did every pioneer have to be like Jim Bridger, be able to speak the native tongue? No. There's certain callings that require certain training. That's what I had to understand first. I'd be trained to, well, what about them? Because I got this natural, Bahram, you, hey, be true to your tribe, Greg. They're going for being deep Christians. Yeah, but they're not me. One size fits one. That's what God keeps emphasizing. And so my mission, he's had to get real clear what it is not. And so that way I would not be surprised when he goes, okay, now we're going to move to this. Now we're going to move to this. And like, oh, that's what ENTPs and the Myers-Briggs survey do. They leave things behind. He goes, yeah, but you're not going to leave them behind. You're going to come back. And so then he'll plug them back in. And here I am again doing this thing. And he's starting to put these pieces together. Jesus TV is one of the pieces that now is like, oh, I get it. We were trained by TV. So in Babylon, how did they train us? They trained one of the big training facilities we had growing up. I did, watching hours and hours of the Brady Bunch.
Partridge Family came after that.
Yeah, and that was
the Odd Couple.
Yeah,
and on Friday night, I mean, see.
Oh, hours and hours. You see Walter Cronkite. You see this, that, and that's where we were trained. Television. And so Jesus TV, I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing here. That I don't have a target audience in mind because he says, I take care of that. So because like in Babylon, that's what you do. You'd market, you'd find who's your market, how do we get eyes on that? He's just said, you won't have to do that. That doesn't mean somebody won't have to do it because I think what he's going to do is hook me up with people. That's their energy. They go, oh, I got this. They can see what it is. But anytime I try to go towards that energy, because I'm smart enough to know how you get things ranked on SEO, on Google, all those things. But he doesn't want me to do that. He's just like, no, this is about you learning how to do this, adjusting the training. You build it, they will come. And then these people are coming for a specific kind of training so that it is akin to the metaverse. So there's going to be a Jesus verse. There's going to be, because that's what he told me in 2015. He told me, he called it a personal electronic universe. It goes by different terms. And he had certain terms like it's a Liahona, it's a Jesus life temple. Finally, I think we've settled, but it's just layers because it's still all those things to me. It's my Jesus world. And if Mark Zuckerberg was right here, he had already dumped $15 billion in, and he would know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, so you're talking about like an electronic universe where you would have a world. I say, right, Mark, that's what you're building. But I knew this thing was coming in 2015. God blessed me with that. And I was given a gift to be able to see the future in technology. When I was younger, I deduced through God's power the digital camera before anybody like in Powell, Wyoming knew about it. DVD, same thing. And God showed me that just so I would know like, oh, you've given me a gift. And so those things I didn't move on, but that's the thing he wanted me to move on. So what people will have is what I'm building right now. It's a world, and it becomes a device that helps you manage and retrain yourself. Mark Zuckerberg's going to create one, and I don't know how. I don't want to speak ill of Brother Mark, but I think what's going to happen, because they're already lined up for it, it's going to be tuned to monetizing, even that term, they monetize. Well, in Jesus land, we don't monetize, we Jesus-ize. That's right.
I was ready for that word.
Yeah, so we say, how can we get more Jesus, not more money? And so then it's like, how can we get more eyes on this? I'm like, how can I get my eyes, more of my eyes upon Jesus? Because then that's what, for me, and scripturally, is the real power. What if you wanted to have real power? Because these guys are looking for power. That's why they're doing that. If you get money, but I'm also looking for power. Anybody looking for power? Yeah, I am. Where are you seeking it? And that's the difference. Over here, though, you have to give up your life in order to find it. Over here, probably the same thing. Mark Zuckerberg's had to sacrifice much. There's approximations of that. And so God did not come to condemn the world. So he's put a spirit in me that's grateful for what's going on with these electronic universes and aware. He has me study it. Just recently, I'm like, you want me to post this to Facebook? Not yet, but he wants me to show, because certain people, like the Aaron Smiths, will say, oh, this is a thing. Because Aaron Smith was the first one who could, that's not this first one, because my friend Lyman Compton could see immediately what I was doing, and he knew it was going to be a thing. He had the mind of an architect and engineer. It'd be like some certain people in 1976 could look at a personal computer, they could walk on, and they could just say, oh yeah, that's going to be a thing. Other people like, that's stupid. And you shouldn't fault them for saying it's stupid. They just don't have the, that's not their gift to be able to see the connections. But there's people like Steve Jobs who could see what Steve Wozniak was up to and go, oh yeah, this is going to happen. A personal computer where you take, but HP didn't even know that could happen because they were thinking big computers. Computers used to take big warehouses. So this shift towards personal computing, only certain people could see it. And so I used to try to convince people, like general audiences, like this is rated G. Now I don't even try to do that. I understand there's only certain people who could come and look at what I have, what Jesus is doing with me, and go, oh, I get it.
I get your general gist.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's
my time is very limited because my wife got home early.
Okay.
I've absolutely got to leave by 5:30. It's 4:32 right now.
Okay, yeah. Well,
so can I ask you some questions and you give me a short answer?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a big one. This is the question I usually end with instead of start with. What can I do to help you reach your dreams, goals, whatever?
Build your own world. That's what I told Aaron Smith. I said, God already prepared me when I would meet people. The thing that they would do that would be most helpful to me is they begin to build their own world in a way that's external, that's shareable. And so he's like, well, it's not yet ready. That's fine. You can share it in a rough form, because what builds the power of this is you create a piece of Zion, a Zion approximation inside of you, but you do it in a way that's shareable. And this is what the architects and engineers will be able to do. And then you say, well, yeah, but this is for me, right? That transparency, then I can go over and grab it, because this is they call them NFTs. These are JFTs, Jesus fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens. So you create this asset.
I understand how it all works.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
You're in my estimation having one of the same difficulties communicating with me and others that I have also.
Mm-hmm.
So let me know if I'm wrong with what I'm going to say.
Sure.
Would your wife be interested in being involved in this conversation or not?
No.
Okay. So does she get you?
Yeah.
She does? Okay.
Enough.
Enough.
Yeah, enough. And that's most people get me who stay with me long enough. They give me enough.
It seems to me a core issue in both face is, what's the word that I used? It's a big word. How to condescend without being condescending. So in other words, you and I, like Jesus, came out of heaven and we came to Earth.
Yeah.
And we both were fortunate enough to discover the way and follow the way far enough that He's given us the mind of Christ. And because we have the mind of Christ, all things are possible. All future events are somewhat available to us. But when we talk about future events, when we talk about things that are in our mind of Christ, most people are just absolutely baffled.
Right.
And they say
The G audience, correct. What he's speaking of is the general audience, correct.
right. So people perceive you probably, I'm guessing, as a bit crazy.
Correct.
Okay. People perceive me as a bit crazy.
Right.
People perceive Aaron Smith as a bit crazy.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm following you.
Have you been diagnosed as being crazy by medical
Uh-huh.
professionals? Me too.
Yeah.
So have you spent time in a mental hospital?
Nope, but I've been in the emergency room because I had mania.
Okay, so I've been in those situations as well, and I've been in manias before. Do you still have manias now, or is it something out of the past?
It's in the past. I was born with high energy. So if normal people ran at 55 miles an hour, I always ran at 85. And it only became a problematic when I moved up to 120 for a moment.
Sure.
Woo! But I've always gone too fast.
Okay.
Yeah, and so God slows me down.
Well, I've been gone too fast. I graduated from high school at age 16, college at 19, made my first million at 21, and I've gone very fast.
Yeah.
So do you think it would be possible or beneficial to try to slow everything that you're thinking and doing down to the point where a general audience can comprehend you without feeling like
I wondered that same thing. But Jesus has informed me that no, I'm not called to the G. He said that some of the architects and engineers that will join with me are the bridge. They'll understand what I'm doing and then they'll translate it.
Mhm.
So like the things that I do, like what I just explained to you, if I could slow down, and I've done it, okay? And I can explain it to people, but it takes charity. They would have to say, okay, I'll give you an hour. And if they gave me an hour, they would understand what Mark Zuckerberg's doing.
Mhm.
They would see how it's related to what Jesus is having me doing.
Mhm.
They would understand that there's two lands. There's the metaverse and there's a Jesus verse. And they go, oh, okay, I get it. And I can show them pictures.
Mhm.
So I could slow it down. It's not like math, we got to go on and on.
Mhm.
But finding a person who has that level of interest, okay, that they could take an hour to talk about the comparison between the metaverse and the Jesus verse, that's rare.
Sure.
Because they're just not interested. A personal computer was the same way. So when I got trained by Jesus, he started me with that. He says, look how the personal computer came. The level of interest amongst the general population, G, rated G, right? General population, the grandmas, the grandpas,
Mhm.
very, very low. They still, I'll stay with my typewriter, thank you. You know, even if they were kind and listened for an hour, they're just
Sure.
like, mm-mm. And so what Jesus has put into my heart is the understanding where I am in history and what is necessary given my mission. But I'm not so supposed to be a big recruiter, but kind, oh yes. You see on my website, there's a phone on there and it says, call me if you don't understand something, because I would do that very thing. They said, I understand you would take an hour to, like what you said, not be condescending, but to explain it. And I'm very good at explaining, very good. But the truth is, finding the person who wants an hour, they wouldn't be able to see how it's worth it. I could take another hour to show them how it is, but yeah, there.
Do you get many calls?
No,
Okay.
no, nor do I expect them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you familiar with Bob Goff?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Bob Goff has written some of the most best-selling books of the last 10 years in all of Christendom. His life, the best comparison perhaps is Forrest Gump. Have you ever seen Forrest
Oh, I
Gump?
have. Uh-huh.
So you know how Forrest Gump went from one great thing to another great thing to another great thing.
Yeah.
And the reason he was able to do that is because he was following Jesus. He was loving everybody that came across
There
his
you
path,
go. Yeah.
and he was reaching them at their own level.
Yes.
So Bob Goff, I would highly recommend his books to you, that you understand that it's possible to be both highly elevated spiritually but also be kind of on the ground.
Well, hold it.
floor.
But what I just explained to you, let me make sure that you are listening,
Okay,
that I'm willing, I could do it right now. Somebody said, okay, for an hour, can you please make it so that the layperson can understand what you're working on?
mhm,
Now, some people say, I don't got time for that. That's not me. Okay, me, I'm saying, hey, I'm with Trey. Would you guys like to have 1 hour and I'll explain just the first part of what I was telling him? And I would. So I would make it for the general audiences.
so let's flip it 180 degrees.
Okay.
Can you listen for an hour to what someone else is doing
I
in a way that is real and empathetic and compassionate?
I do it often. Yeah.
Okay.
My wife knows that that's one of my gifts, that there's members of the family. I know so much about them because I'm really curious about their lives. I can tell you what they do at their work and so forth. So yes,
Right.
the answer is yes.
So, because I'm not sensing a conversation here so much as
That would be
you're
true.
telling me a lot about you. You haven't asked any questions about me, so you say you're curious, but maybe you're not curious.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to condemn you in any
No.
way, shape, or form.
No, that's fine.
I'm trying to teach communication to people that are really turned on to Jesus.
Okay.
Because here's what I see happens a lot. People get born again and they're really vigorous after Jesus, and Jesus will give them as much information as they desire. You know, you seek, you ask, and boom, it comes. But you get caught up in, a friend of mine uses it, future foods or something like that.
Yeah.
You get caught up in what can happen in the future. And while you're talking about the future, which is going to happen, I agree that you're on the right track. You're missing what could happen now, today, with the person you're talking to right now. So I guess what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to teach you some lessons that I've learned, because a few years ago, I would converse with people like you do now to me, and I wouldn't really be connecting with them because I'd be telling them all the great stories about all the great stuff that Jesus has set me to do. When in fact, most people are much more interested in their life and what they feel they've been set to do, whether they credit Jesus or somebody else with it. And the key to communication is to link into that. I can link in with you because I've had similar experiences.
Yeah.
Most people can't link in with you though because they haven't had similar experiences.
Right.
So they may be wonderful and great, all of your experiences, but they're not helpful to others.
Yeah.
So is that something you're willing to consider as something we need to work on?
Oh, absolutely. I've known that I've needed to work on that.
Okay. Have you seen any behavioral therapists, anything like that? that
For
work
12
with you
years.
For 12 years, and how's that gone?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Great improvement.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know right at this moment exactly why Jesus sent me here today, but
Yeah.
I know he sent me here today.
Yeah.
Everything lined up. I was on I-70. I planned to get on off in the Green River, go across to Price, but I always desired to come straight on I-70 to go through the beautiful rocks of the San Rafael Swell.
Right.
Only this time by coming here, guess what? I got to do that.
Yeah.
My wife says she's not able to 7, so boom, all of a sudden I have an extra 2 hours or whatever, so I can make the trip. So, and then I told you about the familiar stuff. So I know there's something here, but I'm still trying to figure out what that something exactly is, how I can help you, how you can help me, and most importantly, how both of us can help others, because that's what it's really about. It's not about our growth, it's about growing others, and we'll continue to grow. But by most spiritual standards, we've already come a long way.
Yeah.
We're already listening to Jesus. We're obeying Jesus. We are doing as the work that he set out before us, but now we need to figure out how to do it, not individually, but with one another and with others, and to bring everybody. So I'm not sure where to go next.
No, that's fine. I've run that way with Jesus, especially since 2015, not knowing beforehand the things I should do. So I do know that you were supposed to come here. I don't know that. I believe that. Jesus is always correcting me. Do you know anything, Greg? Like I don't, but I believe things and I believe them strongly. And I'll die for things that I believe strongly. So that's pretty much all that. I don't have to get fixated on what I know and what I don't know. It's what I believe. And so, yeah, I don't, and I've had to operate. I've met a lot of people because he's doing this gathering. One of the things I've had to get used to is, okay, what do you want me to do, Jesus? I met with this person, and like nothing will happen. Then but then here it comes again, and it'll go, and it'll come again, and like now I believe it's being orchestrated, and I can start seeing things over time. So this is one of those where I don't, but I like that you said, hey, Greg, you're going so fast, people can't understand you. I like that because I like full transparency. And you're right. It's something I struggle with to be understood. So one of the things Jesus has given me a crutch is to not go live. I'm dangerous live. But if you watch me on a video, you can just pause me. I'll come back to that or fast forward me. So he's given me a crutch because maybe I'm like Paul. Can you take away this weakness? Can you make me a better listener? You're not in a world of great listeners, Greg. I know. And so that's how I mitigate a lot of that is I'm available, but clearly one of the things I guess Jesus wanted me to clearly say to you, I am not with my whole mission, my main mission called to general audiences. I'm called to R-rated audiences, restricted. They're the architects and engineers and designers of early design. He was very clear to that. And then once I'm in their midst, then they understand me a lot better because they, Aaron Smith, for instance, I can talk quite a clip and he follows, and I know he's following because then he'll go up, and he'll share back. So if you listen to our polos here, you'd say, oh, Greg does listen. Aaron would say, Greg listens to me go on for an hour about my depression, my this. So I'm excited to have you here. So you're like, oh, okay. But, and if I get excited when somebody comes in, they're called by God, I have to like chill out, Greg. But what I'm pointing to is I've got vast evidence of my capacity to listen with charity. It's actually how I'm able to download their endowments, parts of their endowment. Jesus said, you will gather people's endowments, okay? But you do it through charity, oftentimes serving them. So I've served people. I have endowments. One's the Creation Code, for instance, and I served Terrell Davis for a long time, and he served me. It's a two-way road.
Should I know Terrell Davis?
Well, random to you. Although I just heard, I just called him the other day. I was under the house, and I thought, oh, okay, Jesus, I'll call Terrell. And he's got this book called The Creation Code, and it looks at the numerology of the days of creation, 1, 2, 3. And I was introduced to that because it's a pattern that will be built into Zion, at least to early Zion, to the things I'm doing, waiting for God to do it. But he says it's going to be made into a movie. He said, yeah, the publishers accepted it. And he's unlikely, he's old. And he's just usually one of these people that his ideas just kind of float away, bye-bye. But like, oh, that's cool. And it makes sense. I told my wife, I said, yeah, there's a lot of movie makers out there looking for interesting movies, especially Christian movies. This is a great one because he sees these patterns in the days of creation. But that's an example of an endowment God wants me to have because he wants me to build it into this thing I'm building. But that's where he told me, he said, you will receive this endowment based on charity. So I helped this guy in so many different respects, and I attended to him in many different ways. And so without charity, I don't have the lifeline. So if I'm to receive your endowment, it would require me to serve you, to listen to understand your story. And so that's what I'm doing right now with Aaron Smith. And I'm not doing it strategically. Hey, I want to get your endowment. No, it's just naturally. It's just we become friends, and because he'll go on, and I'll just go like, no, I'm supposed to listen to this whole thing, And so that's what that is, and I'm pointing to that because maybe that's one of your concerns. Well, this guy doesn't have charity. I got charity. It's just not my first gift. It's my wife's first gift, and I'm seeking more of it. That's why more Jesus. What's another name for more Jesus, Greg? Charity. It has a different name. And so it's essential. But number one, I'm not very good live. I'm not a good listener live. But Aaron leaves polos.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there listening to him. I can put him on fast forward and I can still hear him. I can't go to 2.5, but I can go to 2 and I hear every word he says and I'll pause it like, oh, and then I'll respond to it.
Mhm.
So that's, think of me as a handicapped person. Yeah, and that I don't have to be fixed anymore because of my mission. I mean, it shouldn't take a big part of my energies, but we can interact like Aaron and I do if God carves out, like we've got these puzzle pieces that are supposed to come together. We can still do it. I interact with people all the time, business-wise and otherwise, and we just have to carve out the project. You say, help me with my t-shirt. So like, okay, if that's what Jesus tells me, yes, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so,
So I communicate in a different way, certainly than Aaron, certainly than you.
yes,
I write and I read, and I anticipate that my reader's time is very valuable, and I try to get everything down in the shortest possible. And that's why this is speed.
I love it. Yeah,
Not some long spiel. But I have trouble communicating and listening to people who go on and on and on, which is Aaron's habit of sending me polos as well, most of which I never look at because I don't have the ability to comprehend what the point is.
yeah,
When the point is has to be teased out of something much bigger. That's probably my fault, but I just don't know how to deal.
well, we're all called to different things. That's what I had to accept is that we'll all interact like, okay, get Terrell Davis. I'll listen to him for a considerable amount of time, but if I start going on to the things I'm working on, all of a sudden he closes it off. Well, I got to go, and I'm okay with that because I get it. He's not called to receive the endowment that God has given me. Be like Joseph Smith, being nice to somebody, doing something that he needs to Whitmer home. Then all of a sudden he starts going, well, I've listened to you for an hour, and let me tell you about the Book of Mormon. All of a sudden, well, he's got 5 minutes, and then that person's late for the door, and it's okay. See, that's the thing. Charity suffereth long and envieth not, and it's like it's okay that imbalance, and because God will take care of that. So that's maybe I have something that God thinks you need to get with Trey, and I'm down with that. I'm with a lot of people who don't have patience for my long-windedness. My wife, including these are dear people. My wife, my kids, they don't. I mean, they think they get grabbed by the ear. I'm like, oh no, you have no idea how much talking I've done to other people. Now I don't so much. So like your capacity for that is not going to be the same as mine. And Aaron Smith, there's a reason. I'm like, I tell Aaron, you came because Jesus told me these architects and engineers would come. I geek out. I'm like, he's here. And I know he's here partly because he gets real quick what I'm doing. And then he'll go, yeah, so this could be this. And it's like, you know, a rocket engineer working for Elon Musk, and somebody comes on site and they go, well, here's what we're doing. We're going to do it. Oh yeah, I get that. I see why you're doing that. You're going to use the jet propulsion. They get it. Other people are like, I'm glazed over for a reason. You know? And so knowing who we're with in the right room and so forth, because there's people who can go watch conference for 3 hours, 3 long hours. They can't listen to me for 5 minutes, my father-in-law, but it was okay.
So are we following Jesus? So that's my concern. Was Jesus able to communicate with other people on a level where they can both enjoy the conversation or not?
Well, the chosen, Jesus actually speaks to this. He says, some of you will understand these parables, others will not, and that's okay. Ponder upon them. And so that would be my response is, yes, we have an obligation to the general audiences. And I actually, because you were listening closely when I said I have a phone, and I would be willing if somebody said, I really want to understand that thing that you were talking about initially when you talked to Trey, Greg, I really do want to understand that. Would you take an hour with me and do your best to keep it down to the lay? And I would say, yeah, let's go Google. And I would start showing them. I'd say, you see that? And they say, oh, I see what that is. And I could show them some movies. Okay. So what I'm saying is my willingness is there. Their willingness, they're like, I don't see how this has anything to do with getting more Jesus. I'd say, in 8 hours, you will. Like, and they say, I'll listen to conference 3 hours, then I'll watch another conference the next day for 3 hours. I'll put in 9 hours, but for what you're talking about, there's a still small voice says, and yeah.
So in conference, it's 3 hours, but it's in little chunks.
Yeah.
It's different speakers. Do you know how long the average conference speaks for?
Probably 12, 13 minutes.
18 minutes.
18 minutes.
18 minutes is standard. Have you ever read the Sermon on the Mount out loud? It takes 18 minutes.
Awesome.
So there's your first general conference right there.
Yeah. And your critique is what I'm saying, and I'd say to the audience, it's spot on that this is not the right way to go. If you're trying to connect with general audiences, if you watched Aaron Smith and I'd be like, oh, you got your geeks.
I'm trying to be charitable.
Yeah, you are.
But if you're not connecting with general audiences, you're not connecting with the people that Jesus connected with. You're not being a follower of Jesus in that respect.
Can I then respond to that?
Sure.
Okay, so I do connect with general audiences,
Okay.
not about this technical stuff. Okay, if I was a rocket engineer, I wouldn't like, oh, you need to understand this. Trey, a rocket engineer and designer. Say, so then what, Greg, do you personally connect with other people on their stuff? So if they have a project that they're doing, my wife with her art, I say, hey, you ought to get on Etsy.
My wife's an artist also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then you know the lingo. Maybe you want to get on Etsy. The Spencers are doing Etsy. And she's like, and I'm like, okay. So I wait for it because Jesus is going to fight my battles. Jesus, if there's a good idea, he'll bring it back. Later comes Etsy. And so then I take my time to take her paintings. Well, why isn't she doing it? Because I'm helping her. I'm bearing her burdens. I'm taking her paintings because she's a reserved person too. I'm taking her paintings and getting pictures taken of them. And we did. And like, what's the next step? Well, still waiting for it. She's got the little drive, but I may have to. And so what I'm describing is my wife. Okay, well, that's family. Can you give us an example of where it's not family? Well, I just did Aaron Smith, but many examples. I told you about Jesus People potlucks. Did I dump heavy world building on them? No, it was something they could understand. Hey guys, Brad, what you been doing? Oh, cutting trees. Regular conversations. So you were doing that, Greg? Do other church people in your board do that same thing? So they haven't sat down and talked with Sam, who's addicted to meth? No, they haven't. How about this guy who's an atheist, James, who has one leg? How much time have they spent with him? Not much. Why are you here? Because you like James? Jesus does. I personally, my wretched self, like James, homeless, crumbs in his mouth, but James was looking at me, Greg, but that's not what I felt. What I felt is love. So I was doing the Savior's work. So what I'm trying to do is assure you in a moment that, yes, if you dug deeper into my life, you go, oh, this guy does connect with general audiences about general things. Now, does he connect with general audiences about his certain mission that's pretty complex, like highly complex? Not so much, because Jesus has said they're not going to be interested. Your ward, because I can talk in real simple terms, but they're still not interested. Because if I'm talking about how connecting with Jesus is like a form of hypnosis, but it's like the opposite. It's like wake-nosis. You're not using terms they're going to be comfortable with. They understand what hypnosis is, but as soon as you start talking about hypnosis within the church, they're like, that's the sleep of the devil. Well, I'll go ahead and call it that, but how about dehypnosis? they're like, I just don't want to talk about this. Dehypnosis is cool to talk about because then you can start with the premise we've been hypnotized by our society, that all of our attention through the TV has hypnotized us, and that we are effectually hypnotized, and that there needs to be a process of dehypnotizing. So now that's a concept that general audiences could say, I think I understand what he's saying. He's saying that we're all hypnotized, like the sleep of hell has come upon us, all is well in Zion, yea, Zion prospereth. But now he's introducing some new term called dehypnotize. Can't we just call it finding more Jesus? And I'd say, oh, that's what I like to call it too, or getting closer to our Savior. But we're oftentimes not going to have those conversations because the language that came out of my mouth is foreign.
So my wife is a ceramic artist, and she said she was going to work till 6:30. But then at 15:49, it's at 4 o'clock-ish, the firing of the kiln is going faster than expected.
Oh,
So 7 was my late estimate of getting home.
okay.
And normal would be, I said, 12 hours starting at 6:30. She said when she thought the thing wasn't. So the point is, she's waiting for me at home right now.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to,
I've had enough of a conversation with you to
Yeah.
comprehend where you're coming from.
yeah,
And I've got to think about where this
Yes.
will go. But what I did do is I sent you another message via Facebook Messenger, and it has Bob Goff's name and 2 of his books. And if you want to read those books, I would think it would help you tremendously.
I
Because
appreciate
here's
that.
a guy that is more spiritually enlightened than you or me.
Yeah. Well,
Not
there's a lot. There's a
not
lot
a member of
more.
our church.
Yeah.
And if you hear about his life and the way it works, my goal is to learn how to communicate like he does.
Awesome.
Because he reaches people.
Yeah.
And I think reaching people is what it's all about, because that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
So I think those things could be tremendous resources for you. So
Oh.
I leave that with you as an optional free will assignment if you're willing to do it.
Sure. And I will, if Jesus tells me to do it. Oftentimes people tell me, and sometimes the answer is yes. So I'll do it. So I appreciate it.
So I live in Jesus and Jesus lives in me. If you're a true believer, you'll understand that and understand that Jesus came and lived at your house. And
I do. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that.
So thank you so much for the bread and the time and making the video and meeting your family. And I also have some gifts. If you want to come out to the
Oh, absolutely.
event, I've got the gifts.
Great.
So.